first star I see tonight. I wish I may. I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight.
When you wish upon a star.
Father.
Oh boy, we're really doing this. Pinocchio is the newest film to come out of the never-ending landslide of live-action remakes by Disney. It is based on a 1940 animated classic, and this retelling from Back to the Future and Forrest Gump director Robert Zemeckis follows the wooden puppet brought to life after his woodcarver Geppetto wished him alive, and with his conscience Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio embarks on a journey to become a real boy and learning how to be truthful and not selfish along the way. Now, for this review, I'm just going to assume you've all seen the original movie or you know the story of Pinocchio in some way, because I'm going to be making some comparisons to the animated movie in this review and mentioning certain plot points that happen in this movie. And a big reason as to why I'm saying that is because this movie fell into that same trap a couple of other Disney remakes fell into, where it barely changes anything from the original film it's based on. The majority of this film just feels like they're recreating the first movie scene for scene. Now, I never had a strong connection to the original Pinocchio as much as I've had with other animated Disney films like, say, The Lion King or Aladdin or even The Emperor's New Groove. But I do think it's earned its status as a timeless classic and a crucial film in Disney's history. And as I've mentioned, this film is directed by Robert Zemeckis. This is a director I have a lot of respect for and has made some of the most influential films out there. However, I've said it before and I'll say again, I am not a fan of the recent live-action remakes by Disney. So you guys gotta keep that in mind when I say this one might just be their worst one yet. As I've already said, this film adds practically nothing to the original movie it's based on, nor does it change the narrative to make it feel different and justify its existence. And if there is something new added to the story, it comes across as pointless and makes the film worse. The worst change of which being the message. In the original film, there was a recurring theme of how good people will be rewarded. Geppetto brought happiness to others, so he was given a son. Jiminy helped guide Pinocchio, so he was given the role of an official conscience. And Pinocchio saved Geppetto's life, so he became a real boy. So of course they decided to change that for the reboot. In this movie, the message is about social media. Yes, I'm serious. And it doesn't help that this theme is conveyed with as much subtlety as a brick to the head, and causes the remake of one of the most timeless animated films out there, and makes it feel outdated and cringe-inducing despite just being released. And that's another problem with this movie. There is absolutely no subtlety to what's going on in the entire film. Unlike in the original, where we don't get to pick up on the morals ourselves, and the events of the story are directly explained to the viewers throughout the runtime. There are even scenes where Jiminy Cricket breaks the fourth wall and explains story events that are either happening or we already know. The direction in this film overall felt way too safe in the presentation of its story, and the more the film tries to adapt the scene or change it, the more it feels like it's not understanding what made the original work. Never once does the film earn its story progressions or emotional beats, rather they're just going through the sequence of what happened in the original film. And they begin to come off as contrived and are only occurring because that moment was in the original. It makes it so that if you're connecting with the scene, it's not because it was conveyed well in the movie, rather it's because of nostalgia for the original. There's a very weird visual nature to this film. Much like so many other modern blockbusters, this movie heavily relies on CGI, but this film took that to a whole new level. Almost everything in this film is CGI, from most of the characters to the settings to the even small things that didn't even need to be animated, like freaking mugs of root beer. Almost nothing in this film looks genuine, and it doesn't help that the visuals in this film look abysmal. I'll say the best part of this aspect of the film is Pinocchio's design. Considering they completely hid him from the first trailer, I think a lot of people were expecting him to look way worse, but he actually doesn't look that bad. I personally like what they were going for with the 2D animated face mixed with the realistic body. However, the actual CGI on Pinocchio looked off for most of the film. There were a couple of shots that leaned into uncanny valley with how the character looked. But with that said, all the other designs were terrible. Jiminy Cricket looks awful, the skinny tall design mixed with that face just doesn't fit him at all. Just look at him. Don't look away, don't skip this part of the video, just look at him. Monstro is a sea monster in this for some reason, and he maniacally laughs. Okay. John and Gideon look ridiculously fake. Figaro is animated for some reason, and the visuals on him are strangely inconsistent, where one moment he's the size of a normal cat, and next he's so small even Ant-Man could crush him. And Cleo looks like she's going to stare straight into my soul, slowly sucking the life out of me. Look at it! Even some of the green screen on the backgrounds was noticeable. It just makes every scene feel artificial and manufactured. And the only good it does is make the practical sets look even better. Even if some like Geppetto's home are filled with nostalgia bait, where he seems to have a strange passion for creating clocks based off of Disney movies. Because, you know, Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Toy Story were so popular back in 19th century Italy. The tone of this movie is also so jarring. One of the novelties the original film has is how dark and messed up it was and how far it wasn't afraid to go in some scenes. It's probably the only Disney movie where the villains get away with their crimes, children are lured to an island where they drink, curse, smoke, and eventually sold to the salt mines, and the scene that traumatized us all, the infamous donkey transformation. So of course they decided to tone that all down and censor it for the remake. As you could guess with the bad visuals, the donkey scene in this is laughably bad. The fear and tension are stripped away in favor of a cartoony transformation. And the concept of these kids getting turned into donkeys and sold to work in mines is completely rushed and is only seen in full effect for about a minute. And one of the villains actually gets punished by the end. Ironic, considering most Disney live-action remakes advertise themselves as the more mature, cinematic versions of the films they're based on. But if anything, this film tells its story with less maturity, with its lack of subtlety and neuter tone. And for some reason, the coachman also had these shadow monsters that worked for him. You can't make these things up, you guys. And I guess you could say they toned down the darker themes to make this version less scary to children, since this is a family movie. But then again, Coraline is a modern family movie, and look at what that film got away with. And then there's the ending. Oh god, the ending. For some reason, the film decides to have a vague, ambiguous ending right out of an indie film after all the toned down, nostalgia bait, family appropriate pandering the film threw at you during its runtime. And it feels so out of place and unnecessary considering the film we are talking about here. This is a live-action Disney Pinocchio remake, not an A24 film. Not even the music in this is that good. A couple of iconic songs like Give a Little Whistle were cut out, and the songs that stayed were either sung as if they were obscure pop renditions, despite the musical theater score behind them, like When You Wish Upon a Star or An Actor's Life for Me, or had painfully noticeable autotune like I've Got No Strings, and the new songs are all completely forgettable, whether they're only there for filler, have strange alterations in the music and tone, or sound like they're being made up on the spot like the Coachman's song. There's also some noticeably bad audio editing during a few musical sequences, where the score mimicking the original film is boosted so you can't hear the actual lyrics being sung by the characters. Strangely enough, the score for this film was composed by Alan Silvestri, a composer I've always admired. I loved his music for Forrest Gump, the Back to the Future movies, and the Avengers films. But here it sounded like he was composing a Marvel film at some points, while other times the music felt like it came from a classic Disney film that was mostly a copy of the original film's score. Now, at this point, I bet you're all probably expecting me to talk about Tom Hanks. He's an amazing actor and has been phenomenal in everything I've seen him in. Most of you are probably expecting me to say he was the one saving grace of this film. Shockingly, no. Hanks was surprisingly disappointing in this film. Most of the time it sounds like he's muttering under his voice, and he has this inconsistent accent, which might not be a huge problem if everyone around him didn't have such a thick Italian accent. And by the third act of the film, he just completely breaks character and starts playing Tom Hanks. And since almost everything around him is CG, Hanks has no chemistry with Pinocchio, who's supposed to be his own son. Speaking of which, this film implies Geppetto has a son who passed away and he made Pinocchio as a way to remember him. It looked like a compelling direction to take this character in. But after a minute-long song you can't even hear because Hanks is whispering it to himself, they forgot about that concept for the rest of the film. There's even a scene at the very beginning of the film, and I'm not making this up, when he's wishing upon a star and struggling to get his wish out, forgets what to say, and looks over behind him asking himself, how does he say that? Then looks over again and continues the scene. and it looks like an actual blooper where Hanks is messing up and having a line fed to him from the director, and they accidentally left that in the movie. Then there's Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jiminy Cricket. This is an actor I really like. I thought he was great in Knives Out, The Dark Knight Rises, and even one of his earlier roles like Jim in Treasure Planet. And I mean no disrespect when I say this, but he was awful in this film. The entire movie, it feels like he's trying so hard to replicate Cliff Edwards' voice for the character, but his voice just doesn't fit this character and it comes off as obnoxious and overacting. In this movie, Pinocchio is voiced by Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, and I'll admit he seems like a talented actor. I thought his voice fit Pinocchio extremely well. But the direction and dialogue given to him made him come across as a Paw Patrol character. And it didn't help that every line that came out of him sounded like it was from a completely different take, and wasn't edited to make it at least feel consistent.
Why, I'm telling you, the 110% most honestly honest, truthiest truthiness ever. Believe me!
I thought Cynthia Erivo was fine as the Blue Fairy. She brought a new take to her character, and I thought it fit decently enough, even though I didn't like the direction they took her with her rendition of Wish Upon a Star. Although what's weird is that even though the Blue Fairy is a crucial character in the story of Pinocchio, she had less screen time than the Blue Fairy in the original, only appearing in one scene at the very beginning. Keegan-Michael Key voiced Honest John in this film. He's an actor who I think is hilarious, but it felt like he was doing an SNL skit the whole time. And since his character is the main outlet for the social media message, it makes his jokes, as well as most of the film's jokes, come across like this.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Luke Evans was decent as the coachman, but since the Pleasure Island scene is toned down and rushed, he never gets to feel like an actual threat, rather an over-the-top parody character. If I had to pick the best performance in this, it would probably be Kiyan Lamaya as Fabiana. She's a new character, and during her first few scenes, she actually seemed like she could be a potentially interesting character, and has some good chemistry with Pinocchio. But she barely gets any screen time, and they completely drop her by the second half and finish her subplot off screen. There's a scene early on in this film where Pinocchio stares at a pile of CG horse crap in utter confusion, and I think that perfectly sums up the experience of watching this film. Pinocchio might just be the worst Disney live-action remake to date, offering almost no redeemable qualities to make up for its horrendous visuals, weak direction, outdated message, a tone that completely takes away from the narrative, obnoxious music and characters, and rarely justifies its existence as a remake to the animated classic. Instead retells its story scene for scene, and whatever was changed or altered only misses the point of the original film, turning what was once a timeless animated classic into a soulless, outdated mess. The only truly positive thing I could say about this film is at least Disney didn't charge $30 for this and dropped it on Disney Plus instead of theaters. And honestly, I might not be as disappointed in this as I was if it didn't have such a talented team behind this, a director who has made legendary films, from a giant company that has the budget to make a great looking film, an all-star cast with fantastic actors, an underrated composer, and it's not based off a 90s Renaissance movie that was perfectly fine on its own. This is based off a 40s film that left room open for improvement. If you have any strong connections to the animated classic, avoid this at all costs. And even if you enjoy the Disney reboots, this one is now worth a second of your time. I thought long and hard about this, and there are practically no redeemable qualities in this movie that could save it. With that said, I'm giving Disney's live-action Pinocchio a 1 out of 10. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is a 1 out of 10.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So those were my thoughts on Disney's live-action Pinocchio. Thankfully, on the brighter side of things, Guillermo del Toro's longtime passion project adaptation Pinocchio is coming out later this year, and that film looks amazing. With all that out of the way, I have a special announcement. As of the time I'm recording this video, this channel has surpassed 100 subscribers, and I'm planning a special video to celebrate. I'm going to do my first fan request review. If there's a 2022 movie I missed that you guys would like to see me review, leave your idea in the comments and I'll choose one to be the 100 subscriber review. Anyways, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this review and you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and ring the notification bell to be notified for any upcoming reviews.
Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures await!